Okay, so I thought it might be interesting for us to record a flight from start to finish using the Airbus in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, and to show how we can use LittleNavMap and how we can use Volanta at the same time as the flight to kind of integrate all these different things together. And we'll take the plane from cold and dark on the runway, we'll start the plane up and we'll do our flight. Okay, so we're in 2020 and we'll go into the map view. I've already got the Airbus selected, so that's fine. We're going to do our flight from KCHS, which is Charleston, to KILM, which is Wilmington. So it's along this piece of coast here. So we are not going to plan the flight in here though. We're going to go to LittleNavMap and set it up just to see if it works. So this will be a bit of a voyage of discovery. So the first thing we do in LittleNavMap, you can see I've got no flight plan in here. The one thing I have done is downloaded the performance file for the Airbus, and I did that by searching for LittleNavMap performance on Google, and it took me to their folder where they've got some pre-saved performance files. So in here you would go into aircraft and open aircraft performance and select your file and open it, and all that's going to do essentially, if you go and edit the aircraft performance, it's just filled these numbers in for you to suit the Airbus. So the planning software can predict how fast you're going to go, how quickly you're going to be able to climb, how you will descend, all that kind of thing, and your fuel burn along the way. Although we're going to put far too much fuel in on purpose for this flight. Okay, so the first things we need to do is go to Flight Simulator Connection, and we make sure that it's on FSX, and we can click Connect. It won't do anything yet because it's not running. We also need to make sure if we've got several simulators that we pick the correct one here, and if we've not done so before, we do load scenery library, which will load all of the nav waypoints and the runways into the database for LittleNavMap. So you get these airports showing up. Okay, so let's open the search panel and we'll go to airports, and we are looking for our takeoff KCHS Charleston. So if we right click on that, we can set that as our departure point. So you can see this tab has flicked over here to flight plan, and it's already in there. And we are flying to KILM, Wilmington, and right click on it and set that as our destination. So we can now see the line has drawn between the two airports on our map, and we have the departure there and the destination. So now what we might want to do is go and right click on Wilmington and show the arrival procedures for Wilmington. Now I happen to know the wind is going to be coming from this direction, so from the northwest. So we want to be coming in from this runway down here. So runway 17. Let's go and have a look. Runway 35, sorry. What am I talking about? So we'll get ILS runway 35 as our approach. And we'll right click on it and insert the approach into our flight plan. Okay. When we leave Charleston, if we right click on it, we can show the departure procedures for Charleston. So let's have a look through them and see which one looks the most useful to us. We have to take into account we're probably going to be taking off on runway 33, so we want to see the SIDS for runway 33. So let's see what they look like. That's not a bad one. That's an even better one, but it's a very sharp turn off. And because we're going to be explaining things, we don't want to be in a massive hurry to do things. So we'll insert that one. Okay. And now we're going to go up here. Yeah, we are going to be instrument flight rules, which is fine. We're going to put in, say, 9,000 feet as a guess for our flight plan, because we'll use low altitude airways. So this is really an alternative to doing things in Flight Simulator itself. So maybe we'll go and fly via this checker waypoint out here. So we'll add that to our flight plan. Okay, so that's probably enough. So if we go in here and save as a 2020 PLN file, and it's asking us where we want to put it on the system, so we'll say D drive, and I'll say flight sims, flight plans, and IFR Charleston to Wilmington, save. Okay, so now we've done our job in here, we can actually cheat a little bit and we can say, okay, I want to copy this to the clipboard. And we'll see what we're going to use that for in a minute, because we're going to use it in Volanta. So back in Flight Simulator, rather than set up the departure and arrival in here, we're going to try and load the plan. So we're going to go back to D drive, and we're going to go to Flight Sims, Flight Plans, and Charleston to Wilmington is that one, and open it, and let's see if it looks okay. Sometimes it takes a moment for this to happen. I'm not sure why it takes a moment for it to happen. I did click on open, didn't I? Yeah, there it goes. So it's got it right. So at this point we can just carry on as per normal. So we can see it's got low altitude airways, Charleston, and then the ILS into Wilmington, runway 33, arrivals direct, approach automatic. So we'll see how we go along the way. We won't try and touch any of this to configure this any further. I guess we could say ILS 35 right, 35Y, just to give it a bit more. Then the problem here is that the PLN file format doesn't have all of the information in it. Okay, so then we can look in flight conditions, and we'll say live players, all players, live traffic, live weather and time. So we'll go fly. So we're now waiting for Flight Simulator to sort its life out. While we're waiting for that, we'll go over to Volanta. It knows already we're in the or it should know we're in the A320. It's lost sight of the simulator, hasn't it? We'll wait for it to load up. The last thing Volanta saw was the Lancair Legacy in Prepare 3D, and that uses the SimConnect API to talk to, so it's got confused. Let's see if it corrects itself when Flight Simulator loads up. Oh, I didn't tell Flight Simulator where to put our aeroplane, did I? So we're not going to be cold and dark.
Charleston Tower, Airbus Golf. Juliet Bravo Echo Kilo ready to go runway 33 airport to New Hanover.
So yeah, the aeroplane's already going to be running. That's not what we wanted to happen, so I'm going to backtrack out of here. Let's go back to the main menu, because I really didn't want that to happen. I wanted to show you the procedure of starting up the Airbus. So apologies for that. We'll just go back around in a circle quickly. So we come in here, we will load the flight plan, and again it's pointing at the wrong folder. It points at a subfolder of your user directory, which is really not helpful. D drive, flight sims, flight plans, Charleston to Wilmington, and there's our flight plan. I modified it slightly, if you remember, but it's interesting, isn't it, that it hasn't quite understood what this matches up with, but we'll just leave it with exactly what it's got there, I guess. What were we going to do? Oh yes, we were going to change where we're actually going to be when the session starts. So ramp GA, gate parking at Charleston. We'll just say at one of the big gates. Flight. So this should hopefully start us cold and dark instead of with the aeroplane already up and running. So I get to take you through what's required to get the Airbus up and running from cold and dark. It's not really study level in 2020, it's simplified massively, but that means it's an easier job for me to show you, to be honest. So we should find ourselves on the ground, ready to get going, or ready to start powering things up. Let's go and see if Volanta has had more of a think about what it's doing. Yeah, it hasn't, so let's go and configure it. Or maybe we can just click on this. Will it notice that we're in the A320? Okay, A320, we're at Charleston. We are going to Wilmington, which was KILM. and we can add a flight plan. Import a file. So again, we point it at D drive, flight sims, flight plans, Charleston to Wilmington. Failed to load route file. Okay, that's not the end of the world, because we can paste a route. And remember, we took the copy from LittleNavMap of its route. We save that route, and it's drawn it in. So it knows where we're going now. Okay, so now we can just minimize this, and this will just get on with it on its own. And here's our plane ready to go on the tarmac. Just to confirm this, if we look in Volanta, we can see a blue aircraft. That is us, so it confirms the connection is up and running. Okay, so we are in our Airbus A320 on the ground at Charleston. What do we do? First thing to do is turn on the batteries. Now, I'm deliberately not going to use the external power, because you can plug into external power to power the plane up. That isn't always available in the real world, so this does actually simulate what you can do, which is start the APU, the auxiliary power unit. Now, in the big jets, the APU is a small jet engine in the tail. I don't know if you've ever noticed, if we look outside, that's what this hole is for on the back of the plane. That's the exhaust of the APU, which is a small jet engine up here. So that's going to be powering up, and that light there will switch to avail, meaning it's available once it's up and running. So it takes a little while for it to spin up and to stabilize. And the idea of the APU is it provides electricity for the systems. You can hear things coming online already. There you go, it's available, so things are booting up all over the aircraft. If we go and look around now, you can see the screens have come on automatically because there's power to them. And that's coming from the APU. The other thing we will do in a moment is switch the APU bleed on. So, well, we could do it now actually, because we're not at a gate, we're at a parking, so we can go and switch the engine straight on. So by turning the APU bleed on, what we're doing is filtering some of the air from that small jet engine to provide compressed air to the main engines to spin them up. So if we go and look down here, we need to go and turn on the fuel pumps. Again, the APU will be providing the power to the fuel pumps. And then if we scroll down here and have a look, we can turn, if we zoom in, so we can see this, we turn this knob to start. And if we then turn engine 1 to start, and then look on the displays up here, you will see that the N2 percentage is suddenly climbing for engine number 1. So this is engine number 1, this is engine number 2. N2 is the gas turbine, then there's the exhaust gas temperature, and then you've got N1, which is the turbofan. So there's two parts to the engine, there's the gas turbine and the turbofan. As soon as it starts pumping fuel, yep, you can see the kilograms an hour starts to raise, and the exhaust gas temperature is going up. This has gone past 25%, so the engine is actually operating all of a sudden, and you'll see it rapidly climb up and then stabilize. So we'll wait for it to speed up, and you can hear it in the background. So we'll wait for that to stabilize, and then we'll go and start engine number 2. You can see our fuel on block. I'm not sure why the term on block comes from, but yeah, that's how much fuel the aircraft has in its fuel tanks. Okay, so that engine has stabilized, so we will now go and start engine number 2. And you will see now exactly the same procedure. N2 will climb. If we hadn't got the fuel pumps on, it would stall out at 25% and sit there, because essentially that's how fast the compressed air from the APU can spin the engines. If there's no fuel there, there's nothing to ignite, and they won't carry on past 25%. So they idle at nearly 60%, as you can see. Here comes the exhaust gas temperature, so it's started to fire up. You see there's fuel pouring through now. It's gone beyond 25%. The fuel flow has gone up to 163, and this will climb up and stabilize at the same as N1, hopefully. Okay, while we're waiting for that, we can see, because we came in through Flight Sim and used its flight planner, we've got the legs already in the aircraft. If we go and have a look at flight plan on the MCDU in the Airbus, You can see it's already in here, and you can use the arrows to scroll through. So the way to think of these arrows is you're pushing the screen in the direction of the arrow. So if I push that way, you can see it scrolling in that direction. Make sense? If I go the other way, you can see. So the thing we're checking for here is that there are no discontinuities in the waypoints, which there shouldn't be because Flight Sim has provided the flight plan itself. If we were to program this from scratch ourselves, it's very common to get discontinuities and then you have to go and sort them out. But I'm not going to do that on today's demonstration. It's a shame actually, in the stock A320 in Flight Sim, the ECAM buttons don't work. So these would give you the status of the various systems around the aircraft. You can see they're all inoperative. So it's a shame because you'd be able to see the bleed status, the APU status, and so on and so forth. Okay, now we have the engines running, we can disable the APU bleed. Also, we are automatically taking power from the engines. Unlike a Boeing, the Airbus cross-feeds itself. So we can now go and turn off the APU, and it won't hurt anything, and the Eval switch will go back off again. Because we've got the engines running, they are providing the electricity now for the systems. Hopefully that makes sense. In more study level simulations, you have to set up the ADIRS system, which is the inertial guidance. We don't have to do that in the 2020 version. I wonder if they'll ever improve that, or if this is as good as it's ever going to get, to be honest. Okay, so that's pretty much ready to go. So we go and arm the ground spoilers, we go and prepare the flaps for takeoff, and then we start talking to the control tower. So we pull up control tower, we tune clearance, request IFR clearance.
Clearance delivery Airbus PALF. Juliet Bravo Echo Kilo ready to copy IFR clearance to New Hanover.
Okay, get ready.
Airbus Golf. Juliet Bravo Echo Kilo is cleared to New Hanover Airport as filed. Takeoff runway 335 and maintain 7,000 feet. Departure frequency is 119.
So we can go and pre-program in 7,000 feet on the control panel above the instruments for the autopilot. Departure frequency 119.3 squawk. We don't need to worry about that, it does it for you, so read back and acknowledge.
Airbus Golf. Juliet Bravo Echo Kilo cleared to New Hanover Airport as filed. Takeoff runway 335 and maintain 7,000 feet. Departure on 119 decimal 3 squawk 3741.
It's going to be interesting actually, because I pulled this in from LittleNavMap. Just looking at this, it hasn't got speeds. Or it has for some of it, but we'll see. We'll see how it behaves. Contact ground 121.9, so we contact ground, and they'll give us taxi instructions, I imagine. Is it going to contact ground today? Request. Oh, we have to request taxi. Sorry, my bad.
Charleston ground Airbus Golf. Juliet Bravo Echo Kilo with Sierra ready to taxi IFR. Airbus Golf. Juliet Bravo Echo Kilo taxi to and hold short of runway 33 using taxiway Juliet Charlie Alpha.
So this is where we can use LittleNavMap JCA. So we can see where we are on the map. We're here. So we have to take Juliet. If we zoom in a bit further, then C. Because we're going for runway 33, remember. And then, is that Alpha? This isn't labelled very wonderfully, is it? Let's see if Volanta has a better diagram. It probably does. Yes, it does, look.
Airbus Bravo Echo Kilo acknowledge last transmission.
But interesting, it's got Juliet way up there. We better acknowledge that. So they want us to go via taxiway JCA. Essentially we need to get to runway 33 holding short.
Taxiing
yeah.
Short runway 33 using taxiway.
So runway 33 is there. Yeah. Let's clear the track. So we need to taxi up here, along here to runway 33 and hold short here. Okay. So let's get a tight turn going. We should really do a pushback here, but I'm not going to bother, just in the interest of speeding things along quickly. I'm going to use the wonderful tight turn circle of the A320. So if we go and look on LittleNavMap, we can see this yellow aircraft next to the cursor down there turning. Okay, so we're going to taxi down into that corner, I think. Let's see how we're going. Yeah, that's fine. So let's center our view up. You can see from outside as well what we're doing. We can go a little bit higher in the cockpit while we're taxiing. So we're just going to follow the route round until we get to runway 33 and hold short, and then we'll get invitation to contact tower. We've already got the tune tower already, but we'll wait until we get there, until we're holding short. It's a bit odd actually talking to the or interacting with the computer ATC. It's not as obvious as a human. So we can see we're going to take this next right turn. Before we get down to runway 33, I'll explain a little bit about how the autopilot panel works in the Airbus. So we're going to take the next right turn. There's an aircraft ahead of us taking off apparently. Yeah, you can just see him over there in the distance. If you look over there, he's on the runway. So we're going to leave the autopilot in managed mode as far as we possibly can, unless it starts to go wrong. Oh, maybe that wasn't that. That was another aeroplane that I saw, or a vehicle maybe in the distance. That was obviously that TBM that was taking off that we saw on the map. Okay, so we're coming up to the hold short point for runway 33. And while I'm holding short here, before I contact tower and ask for takeoff permission, we will stop here. To prevent us from rolling, we will turn the parking brake on. I just want to spend a few moments explaining to you. So these are the controls for the autopilot. And you can see we've got speed, heading, latitude mode. You've got some indicators here for what mode it's operating in. You've got altitude and you've got vertical speed. And these various controls control what we're telling the aircraft to do. It's a bit interesting actually. You've got these flight directors, which I've not switched on yet. I should have done that. Flight director gives you this cross. So there's two systems going on here. There's the autopilot there's the system that instructs the aircraft where to fly. Or it decides what it wants to do with the aircraft, and then the autopilot follows its instruction to do that to the aircraft. So with the flight directors on, you're seeing what the aircraft wants to do. With the autopilot on, the aircraft will follow what that system wants to do, if that makes any sense. We ought to check the QNH as well. Did we see that on the briefing already? Did they tell us it? I don't think they did. Okay, we can double check the QNH. If we go on to the airport information for this airport, so show information for Charleston, we can see it here, and we should see a weather report here. And 2994 is the atmospheric pressure. Now you can see this is showing it in a different it's 2992 it says at the moment. What you can find is there's a gauge here. You can flick between hectopascals and QNH. So there you go, 2994. What that influences is what it sees as the altitude we are at. So you will see if I move this, the altitude is moving on the gauge here. So in order to know accurately what altitude you are, you need to have the QNH set. And you would typically do it before approach to the destination airport as well. When you're at altitude, you change it to a standard where you push this button in and it changes it to 2992 anyway, which is like the standard for high altitude. Okay. What are we doing? So we put the flaps to 2 for takeoff. So yes, I was explaining about the autopilot controls. You can push or pull them, and that's simulated in this two-dimensional interface by either clicking the top or the bottom of them. So you get managed mode or selected mode. Managed mode is using a fully programmed flight plan in the MCDU, in the flight computer. If you don't have a flight plan programmed, you can't use managed mode. If you go for selected mode, you will notice the dot goes away, which means you're in selected mode. The dot is there if you're in managed mode. And obviously if you're in selected mode, it wants to know what speed you want to do. So for example, you might go and increase that to say 220 knots for the climb out. But I'm going to leave it in managed mode. I'm also going to leave the heading in managed mode, which means it's going to follow the flight plan. If I press the bottom half of it, I get selected mode, so it will try to fly to 65 degrees. But I'm going to put it back into managed mode, which means it's using the flight plan. The altitude is a slightly different matter. We get to select the altitude regardless of the flight plan, but we get to say how we get there is either managed or not. Yeah? And if you're using a selected altitude, then you can use the vertical speed to get there. Okay, I think that covers it. So let's go now and talk to the tower. Request takeoff clearance. IFR.
Charleston Tower, Airbus Golf. Juliet Bravo Echo Kilo at runway 33 ready for takeoff IFR to New Hanover.
Airbus Golf. Juliet Bravo Echo Kilo. Hold short runway 33. Traffic is generic. On final.
So it's saying that something is on final. Oh, is it this one here? There's an executive jet. He's at 1,000 foot, 1,200 foot. Yeah, he's coming down. Well, that's rubbish because he's still coming. Should we have a look for him? There's his nav lights. I'm going to wait, because it annoys me if people are flying. I've got labels switched off, by the way. This could very well be another human, and I know it annoys me if I'm on an approach and somebody doesn't wait. Yes, acknowledge transmission. I'm waiting though. I'm going to wait for him. So we're going to wait for this aeroplane before we go. Oh look, there's a car waiting to take off. He's a bit close, isn't he? As soon as I open the engines up, that's going to be goodbye his windscreen wipers, I imagine. So where's this plane coming? Is he going into the trees? I think that guy just crashed.
Charleston Tower JetBlue 625 12 miles east inbound 40 ME runway 33 approach.
No, you're not. You've just given me takeoff on clearance on 33. What is going on? That plane went into the trees, didn't it? Okay, I'm not going to wait for any more. Let's go. Center the view up. I have no idea what's going on with that. We're going to take no notice and just get on with our takeoff. I can't see him out there. Okay. We've already been given clearance, so I'm just going to accelerate and go. Having said that, there's a truck on the runway. I'll wait for him. Okay. Here we go. Full throttle. Doesn't seem to be much wind around. The plane's not being pushed sideways at all. Maybe gently to the right, but not much. which means the wind is coming from the right, pushing the tail left, which pushes the nose right, if that makes any sense. So we're coming up for 140 knots.
JetBlue 625, clear to land runway 33.
So rotate,
8 at 24.
gear up. Flaps to 1.
Clear to land runway 33, JetBlue 625.
Okay, raise flaps. Auto throttle is on, we're on climb out, we turn the autopilot on at this point, and the plane starts to follow the flight plan.
Overspeed, overspeed, overspeed.
So we're pulling the throttle back until it's on this marker here, which means it will enter speed mode.
Airbus Bravo
Or throttle climb, it's still on the climb out.
Departure on 119er decimal tree.
So we have selected manage speed mode. So it's trying to get back for 250 knots now. If we change the direction of this, we can see our first... Yep, we're acknowledging handoff to the departure.
119er decimal tree for Airbus Bravo Echo Kilo.
And then we tune departure, contact departure.
Charleston departure Airbus Golf. Juliet Bravo Echo Kilo is climbing through 4,000 feet for 7,000 feet.
Airbus Golf. Juliet Bravo Echo Kilo Charleston departure.
Yep, 2994 is correct.
Altimeter 29er decimal.
Continue as planned. So obviously the air traffic control are not going to give us vectors because we've got a flight plan that has been filed, so they know where we're going, they know how we're planning to get there, so they just tell us to carry on our flight plan. They can see where we are on radar. Okay, so this is managed speed mode, look, doing its thing. It's trying to hold us to 250 knots, so the throttles are moving all on their own. But they don't move on an Airbus, you leave them on this detent, which is this marker here. And that tells the system we want to use a given program mode for the throttle. So it's managing its speed fully automatically. So we can see over here there's a 46 knot wind from 253 degrees, which is why we are going this direction but being pushed this way. So they want us now to go to, because we've just reached 7,000 feet nearly, so ATC has seen that and they've told us to go. We acknowledge the instruction, they want us to go to 9,000 feet.
Climb and maintain 9,000 feet Airbus Bravo
So
Echo
we
Kilo.
say engage managed mode to get there, and you will see the vertical speed is climbing automatically. And the throttles are coming up to maintain 250 knots. Remember, below 10,000 feet you are not allowed to go faster than 250 knots. So we just carry on along our way. So everything's looking good. The airplane's trimming itself, that's what you can see moving there.
Airbus Bravo Echo Kilo contact Jacksonville Center.
So okay, we're moving out of the departures range and we go to center control now.
4.7 for Airbus Bravo Echo Kilo.
So now we tune to center.
Frontier Flight 802 heavy contact Jacksonville Center on 128.7.
And then we get a chance to contact Jacksonville and just tell them we're here.
Jacksonville Center Airbus Golf. Juliet Bravo Echo Kilo is at 8,700 feet, climbing 9,000 feet.
See, the interesting thing here is, in the real world, you would probably tell center where you are as well. See that they know our flight plan as well, so this is the point of filing a flight plan. Every station along the route has your flight plan. So they're expecting you. If you don't appear, they may actually raise the alarm that you should have appeared and you haven't. So there's multiple checks and balances that go on in the airspace. So we can actually look outside the window now. Should we go and press the outside key?
Jacksonville Center Brickyard 485
So while we're flying along, Should we go and have a look at LittleNavMap? So if we zoom out, we can see the route we're on, flying off towards MLTRE, and then we'll fly along here to Checker, then we'll fly along to Truly and come into the approach. Was that for us? No, that was for someone else. Brickyard 4859. So you should see the aircraft start to make its turn soon. If we go and look in Volanta, we can see it recording the flight as well. So you can see us along this line, going towards here. So Volanta hasn't drawn the detailed flight plan. It hasn't drawn the departure and arrival plans in. But it doesn't really matter, to be honest. I do wonder if Volanta will improve over time to include those, you know, more detailed plans. So if we go and look in the aircraft itself, and go back inside, how are we looking? So we're starting our turn. You can see we've banked over. If we look outside, yep, we can see that happening. And we're starting our turn. So we turn on terrain radar and see if it's operating. It's sometimes a bit hit and miss as far as I can ever tell. Yeah, I'm going to turn it off. We will turn on airports on this display, and we'll turn on waypoints. Should we have a look at that? Is it going to show us any? Yeah, there's a few out there. Zoom out a bit further. So we're 60 miles from Checker. So we're at 9,000 feet. We're quite happy. ATC are leaving us alone, and we're just basically flying the route now. So it's not a problem. I'm not sure you can accelerate time in Flight Simulator 2020. It might be quite useful at this point. It's lovely weather, as you can see. Whenever I do these flights, I always have awful weather, so you can't see anything. Just hide that for the moment. Yeah, I mean, look, it's just clouds everywhere. Okay. Oh, it's drawn in some more waypoints now. Let's just put the airports on. Maybe if we turn terrain on, I wonder if it will show anything. It's probably flat as a pancake around here, that's why there's nothing appearing. We can go and look at the flight plan, and it can show us what the next waypoint is. It's highlighted. Checker. Just coming up, as you can see. 57 nautical miles away. Gives an ETA, I guess that is.
Traffic is 11 o'clock, 4 miles at flight level 340 generic. Report them in sight.
It's a good point, actually. Have we switched on the...
Airbus Bravo Echo Kilo, contact Jacksonville Center on 127.905. American 1971 traffic is 5 o'clock, 3 miles at flight level 370 generic. Report them in sight. Generic 3 Lima. Hangzhou has the generic in sight.
I mean, TARA, the TCAS system is switched on, so it's not a problem.
American 1971 traffic in sight. American 1971 traffic is 2 o'clock, 4 miles at flight level 370 generic. Report them in sight.
Yeah, they're not paging us, so we don't need to worry.
Traffic is 10 o'clock, 2 miles at flight level
We should have listened to that.
generic. Report them in sight.
127.905 for Airbus Bravo Echo Kilo.
American 1971 traffic in sight.
So we tune to Jacksonville Center. Contact Jacksonville Center. So we're being handed off to a different sector, basically.
Juliet Bravo Echo Kilo 9,000 feet.
American 236, contact Jacksonville Center on 127.905.
It'd be quite nice. I think they're planning this in the future, that there will be different voices for the different sectors, so you'll be able to have more definition between the different sectors, so you know you're hearing different controllers.
American 1320 traffic is 9 o'clock, 4 miles at flight level 380 generic. Report them in sight.
Okay, so we've made our turn and we're flying off towards Checker. If we look on LittleNavMap, we can see where we're going. The attraction for having Volanta is it gives you a landing report, which LittleNavMap doesn't do. There's a lot of planes around, aren't there? So you can see these various planes that are being talked about on the radio. Now I've zoomed in, you can see them all.
Generic November 513 Juliet, November Jacksonville Center, continue as planned. Altimeter 29.905. Brickyard 4859 traffic is 9 o'clock, 2 miles at flight level 340 generic. Report them in sight.
We can change the size of this font. If we go to options in LittleNavMap and use for AI aircraft, what is it? Oh, here we go. Text. I want it to be 80%. Apply. Okay. Yeah, that's a bit better. So you can see their identities a lot easier now. So they're way, way above me. Look, they're at 33,000 feet. I'm only at 9,000 feet because I'm only doing a short flight. So this is obviously going to be quite a boring flight to watch until we get into the last few moments of the flight. I'm not sure on the recording software if I can pause it. Oh, I can actually. I can pause recording. So I'm going to pause now and I'll switch back on in a moment. Okay, so I'm unpausing because we've just had some instruction. You can see here, Airbus, you are 64 miles southwest, maintain present heading and altitude, expect RNAV runway 35 approach via OISUB transition. So we are going to go and check what that means. So let's go and have a look at this. So show arrival procedures, runway 35. OISUB, there it is. Insert that into the approach instead. So it's slightly different than the one we had planned. So ATC has given us something slightly different. Not a major problem. So what we need to check when we look at OISUB is what altitude we're supposed to be at when we get to OISUB. They will probably tell us in advance. So these are instructions to other aircraft, so we don't need to take any notice. So we know when we get to OISUB we need to be at 3,500 feet. Makes sense? So let's see if let's see how good this simulator is. Let's see if it will let us reprogram the destination. So if we go to flight plan and we switch on KILM, we can say arrival is ILS runway 35. It was RNAV 35. It's not going to do that, is it? So let's go flight plan again. KILM, arrival. ILS runway 35. Start. Via. Interesting. So it hasn't got OISUB in the approaches, which is a bit odd. I mean, we can see it's very, very similar to OISUB, so we're not going to take too much notice. Where am I? So I'm just looking at this approach. So this is the elevation plot in LittleNavMap, by the way. So it's saying we need to start descending based on the performance of the aircraft. We need to descend about 41 miles out. So we'll show you how you do that in a moment. We should see it marked on here. There's a deceleration and a... Yeah, this hasn't got top of descent marked, but then we didn't program the flight plan in properly, did we? We just imported it in, so we got bits of data missing, which isn't a major problem. So let's see. We need to be at OISUB, so let's go and do this manually. Yeah, let's go and do this manually from now on. Then instead of using the autopilot with it on managed mode, we're going to go to selected mode. Selected. We want 60 degrees, please. So we want to get back over to here. So I'm just getting a few degrees back. We'll go for 3,500 feet now. So 4,000, switch this to hundreds. 3,500 feet, managed mode, and we want to go down at 1,000 feet a minute in managed mode. So if we look at the ILS look, it's descending 1,000 feet a minute. We'll also go managed on the speed. Selected airspeed mode, we want to go 200 and... We'll leave it for 250 at the moment, that's fine. So we can always use the air brakes when we get closer. I'm just trying to make this flight a bit shorter as well. Otherwise we'll be sat here for ages. So you can see the rate of descent bringing us down. So we're probably not descending quite fast enough. So let's go for 1,500 feet a minute. So they now want us to call Wilmington approach. So we acknowledge handoff.
Going to 135.75 Airbus Bravo Echo Kilo.
Tune Wilmington approach. Contact Wilmington approach.
Wilmington approach Airbus off. Juliet Bravo Echo Kilo is at 7,800 feet, climbing 9,000 feet.
No, we're not.
Airbus off. Juliet Bravo Echo Kilo Wilmington approach. Continue to
2987. So that's important because it means that the barometric pressure, which affects the altimeter, is different at the destination. So we're good to go. So we are descending to 3,500 feet for OISUB. Coming down a little bit too steeply, if anything, but it's not really a problem. We're doing 250 knots. The problem is if you select too steep a descent rate, the aircraft won't actually be able to slow itself down to stay at your target speed, which is why you need to give yourself time to descend. You generally find with the big airliners it's around about 1,700 to 2,000 feet a minute they can do without accelerating. Yes, we know. I'm going to ignore you. Acknowledge. Ignore.
Climb and maintain 9,000 feet Airbus Bravo Echo Kilo.
Yeah, you'll be lucky. Because otherwise, how are we going to get down in time? I wonder if they'll cancel our instrument flight plan. So you can see we're almost back on track for the approach into OISUB. So I'll go a couple of degrees to the right in a moment. So 62 degrees, and you can see the aeroplane is very, very gently banking to get to 62 degrees. So this is where a lot of stuff's going to start happening now. We're going to come off the speed to 220. And the plane won't slow down in a hurry because we're sliding downhill, remember. See, look, it doesn't want to lose that speed. No! I'm going to cancel the instrument flight plan.
Wilmington approach Airbus Bravo Echo Kilo would like to cancel IFR.
Airbus Bravo Echo Kilo IFR flight plan is cancelled. Radar service terminated. Squawk 1200. Maintain VFR. Frequency change approved.
Nearest airport list. We are going into Wilmington. Tune Wilmington Tower. Request full stop landing.
Wilmington Tower Airbus Comm. Juliet Bravo Echo Kilo is 19 miles south with Oscar to land.
Airbus Golf. Juliet Bravo Echo Kilo Wilmington Tower. Mid straight in runway 35. Altimeter 29.87 wind tree 29 at 19er.
So ILS, which is really hard to see on here, is 110.3, 349 degrees. So let's go and program that on the nav radios. 110.3, oh, it's already got it. What was the direction of the runway? 349. 49. And put that into the course, and then... So we're not going to worry too much about their instructions. So we need to be coming down to 2,500 feet though. Yes, we copied. We're coming straight into runway 35, which is great for us.
Airbus Bravo Echo Kilo.
So we're letting it come down to 2,500 feet at the rate it wants to. If you don't select vertical speed, it will do it at a sensible speed. So you can see it's coming in. We're going to descend 200 flaps to the first position, go for 200 knots. Actually, we could go to 180 before we make this turn, if I can get the mouse to stay on there. I hate these mouse wheels on gear. It's keeping half an eye on the speeds, so we're way clear of the danger zone of being able to overspeed and damage anything. So we're going to make the turn and enter the ILS. Ideally we need to be about 2,500 feet on the way in, and we're getting to it, which is good. So we need to change to 349 degrees anytime soon. So I'm going to start doing it now. So hopefully, if we turn this to... What's the weather like out here? Okay, we can't see anything, which is wonderful. So we're going to turn this to landing mode, and we're going to get rid of the clutter,
2,500.
and we're going to turn on approach mode, which will bank us to the right because we're off to the left of the glide slope, which we can see here. So the plane is re-attaining the glide slope for us. We're going to slow to 160 knots. Going to go more flaps. And full flaps. And I'm just entering the ILS. So you can see now the glide slope is coming into the centre. We are below the glide slope, which is great. So let's centre the chair up. see over the nose as well, and then pan down slightly and zoom in slightly so we get good visuals of what we're doing. So you can see here comes the ILS. So I'm going to turn the automatic throttle off at this point and the autopilot off at this point, and we're going to fly it in. So gear down, we've already got the gear down, we've already got the flaps down. So we're basically going to fly the aeroplane down the ILS. So there goes we're starting to descend now. We're slightly off to the right, so we'll go slightly left. But not too much. Slightly below. Pull back up. That's the wind. There's a 20 knot wind that's pushing us sideways. So we'll turn into it slightly. That's good. Looking at the speed, we're holding speed, which is excellent. We're going to turn right slightly because we're back on the centre line.
Bravo Echo Kilo, clear to land runway 35. Wind 310 at 22.
We acknowledge the landing clearance, and we can get that out of the way now.
Airbus Bravo Echo Kilo.
So we're on fully manual. We can see the lights of the runway slightly out there now, so we're going slightly to the right. So we're going to turn slightly to the left. We're going to start slowing down a little bit more. Get to 140 knots or thereabouts. Just come down ever so slowly. We're a little bit high. We're off to the left. So we'll steer slightly right. Steer back left, we're slightly low.
1,000.
Okay, this is concentration time now, isn't it? So flying in manually, just no sudden massive movements, it's just small controls and doing things consistently. I'm using judgment. So I don't want to get too slow, so I'm raising the throttle again. Pretty much on the ILS. Those trees are very close to the approach, aren't they?
400.
Getting a bit low.
200.
So a little bit of turbulence, not too much though. A bit slow, but that's fine.
100. 60. 50. 40. 30. 20. Retard. 5.
And we're down. So that's the thrust reversers that you can hear. Turn it back off and we just roll to the
Airbus
end.
Bravo Echo Kilo.
We could exit here, couldn't we?
With enable.
Flaps up.
Airbus Bravo Echo Kilo, contact ground on 121.9.
There's a fuel station over there. That seems like a good place to park. So we pull up the ATC, we acknowledge the ground handoff.
121.9 for Airbus Bravo Echo Kilo.
tuned round. This is uphill. Request taxi to gates.
Ground Airbus Golf. Juliet Bravo Echo Kilo request taxi to the gate.
Airbus Golf. Juliet Bravo Echo Kilo taxi to gate 6 using taxiway Bravo.
So again, you could go and look at the map. So whereabouts are we? We have landed at Wilmington. This is Bravo, so the gates are all over here. So we need to do our U-turn, but I'm not going to bother. Yes, we did it. So you don't really want to watch me taxiing all the way. Oh, let's do it for just to complete it. We've done the rest of the flight, haven't we? So let's do a turn. I'm going to scare this Cessna to death. So this is taxiway Bravo. And the gates are right around the corner. So let's get some speed up and get there in a bit of a hurry. What, gate 6? I'll have another look at the map in a moment. So which way am I supposed to turn? Let's just make sure of this before we get to here. So we're going to take the next right. And gate 6 is got an aircraft on it, hasn't it? Oh, it's there. Okay. So gate 6, I have to go tight right and then round to the left. Can I get past these other aeroplanes? Whoa, there's a forklift. Let's just have a look. It's going to be that one, isn't it? Or is it? It's where all those trucks are parked. So I guess they're waiting for me, aren't they? The nose has to go in that corner. An outline of an aeroplane on the floor if you look carefully. Quite why the jetway is in the middle of the place I'm supposed to put the nose, though, is another matter. Because that's number 7. This is number 6. I'm going to park diagonally across it and ask for the jetway and see what they do. Okay.
Ground Airbus Golf. Juliet Bravo Echo Kilo, could you please connect the jetway to the aircraft?
So we just turned on external power, and we can turn the engines off. Oh, it does this silly thing with the logbook. We just continue. Otherwise we don't get to see. As soon as you turn the engines off, it does the logbook. So they're connecting the jetway, which is quite cool. If we look outside, you can see it go onto the aircraft. Should we go and do the rest of the stuff just for a bit of fun? So if we go scroll lock, ground services, request. Wait, where am I getting alarms? External power is on. Perhaps it wants the auxiliary power unit back on while we're sat here. Anyway, request the power supply.
Ground Airbus Paul. Juliet Bravo Echo Kilo, could you please send the ground power unit?
That'll be this guy here.
Juliet Bravo Echo Kilo, ground power unit is on the road.
And he's just scratched his truck on the post there. So we'll also ask for the baggage service, and we'll ask for the catering service.
Juliet Bravo Echo Kilo, could you please send the baggage? Airbus Golf. Juliet Bravo Echo Kilo, baggage is on the way.
And the catering service. And you should see the back door open for the catering service. Oh look, he's just driven straight through the other truck.
Airbus Golf. Juliet Bravo Echo Kilo, the catering truck is on the road.
And he's about to run over the top of the baggage conveyor. That's great, isn't it? And request fuel supply just to get a full set of everybody.
Juliet Bravo Echo Kilo, could you please send a fuel truck?
Oh look, he's going to drive. They really have no idea what they're doing, do they?
Fuel truck is available.
That's messed the simulator up spectacularly. Awesome. Now he's hit the aircraft. So we're out of service now because the power truck has run into us. Now the catering truck is going to come in through the front door. I've never seen this happen. There we go, they're sorting their life out slowly. So you'll probably see the cable is now... Yep, he's run the cable across the front of the catering truck. He's missed the door entirely. Oh no, he's just magically slid himself. They're going to drive underneath a hot jet engine and burn themselves. This is great, isn't it? And whoever tries to get that baggage out from under the engine, good luck. Oh, and he's run into the catering truck. Fantastic. And now they're magicking the baggage, which is great. Okay, anyway, that was Flight Sim 2020 with the Airbus. You can see, as we saw, there's the markings where I should have been parked. There's a jetway in the way. But we're not going to worry too much about that. It kind of nearly worked. And we saw some IFR stuff, some VFR stuff, and operating the plane. So yes, I'm going to stop the video there. Hopefully you enjoyed it.